Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you here today. I sat down and I watched the WWE Royal Rumble that I had never seen before. It only took me a few minutes into the show before I had to start putting things together. I ended up selecting the 2003 WWE Royal Rumble because of the fact I had never done a review on it. Once I started this up, and I ended up realizing that the first match on the card was an important match to watch. It ended up being Brock Lesnar going up against Big Show. And they were saying, I thought it was like one of those gimmicks that I'd seen in the past that they'd done on pre-shows. The winner was going to get the number 30 slot. The loser was going to get the number 1 slot. But the announcers were going over the fact that the winner was getting the spot into the Royal Rumble. And the loser was not. Honestly, made no sense to me how these two big names don't have a spot in the Royal Rumble going into it. Made even less sense to me as I was fast forwarding through the show and came across the Chris Benoit versus Kurt Angle match for the World Heavyweight Championship. And they were saying that Benoit won his chance to go after the championship because he had defeated Big Show in a number 1 contenders match. So how was Big Show in the discussion to be the number 1 contender of SmackDown, and he's not able to even say like, hey, give me one of those numbers for the Royal Rumble? Brock Lesnar, a newcomer, but at this point, I think he's going on. No, that was 2002. He's already been WWE champion. He's won King of the Ring in his first year. How is he not able to be like, I think I got a pretty good resume. Let me get one of those numbered balls. It doesn't really make a lot of sense here. For anybody out there who's kind of wondering why I never had a chance to watch the 2003 Royal Rumble, 2003 was a weird time in my life, honestly. Very shortly, right before this show, I took like a 2-year hiatus away from watching wrestling. I think almost everybody is taking a little time away. My story basically was I watched wrestling almost my entire life. I had moved from Georgia to California, and I went out bowling one night with some friends, and it was a Monday, and I said, at one point that I had to get home to watch Monday Night Raw. I've never been one to really hide the fact that, I was going home to watch wrestling. I think it's pretty much everybody that knows me knows that I do that. So it wasn't like I was hiding it. And I went home and I watched Monday Night Raw, and it was probably a few Raws before the Royal Rumble, and ended up like Scott Steiner had made his debut in the company at the Survivor Series. They were building us up to him having a main event match against Triple H. There was going to be some sort of a program that built this up to whatever it was, and they had a debate to end Monday Night Raw as like the must-see main event deal. And I kind of as I was watching this, just had a moment in my life and was like, I could be out with my friends. Who knows? Like, we could have been talking to girls. We could have been doing this and that. Or we could have been having fun. But I was watching wrestling. And at that point, I just was done. It wasn't like, they had put up a long string of shows that was bad or anything like that. I was just at a point in my life where I was just like, wash my hands. I'm done with this for a while. So I basically missed the big rise of Brock Lesnar. By the time I came back, Brock Lesnar was gone. I missed Evolution. As I can tell, SmackDown had one hell of a roster at this time, so I kind of missed all of the SmackDown 6 that people talk about with Paul Heyman putting together the shows really based around tag teams. I missed a big good portion. It was actually me going to a used DVD store. I had a big DVD collection at the time, so part of my days off from work, I was driving to Best Buy. I was driving to like the video game store, pawn stores, just kind of like picking up DVDs here and there along the way. And they had a WrestleMania 20. It was a 3-disc. It looked kind of cool in its case. I didn't really care about WrestleMania 20 because I wasn't watching wrestling at the time. But it had a documentary on there about WrestleMania 19. A WrestleMania that I hadn't seen before, but I was just kind of like, it says it's voiced by Jesse Ventura. A lot of behind the scenes stuff. I hadn't heard anything about it. I literally was just reading it right off the case, and I was like, this is probably going to be good. And if not, they've got this top 10 matches of WrestleMania on here as well. So it's like, worst comes to worst, I got 10 good wrestling matches that I can watch right here. Like Savage versus Steamboat was on there. I'm sure Hogan and Andre were on there. I didn't have a wrestling collection at the time, so it was one way to watch those old matches. So I figured I'd get my money's worth out of it. I bought it. I watched the documentary. It was great. I watched the matches. They were good. Kind of wanted to get my money's worth on it, so I ended up watching the show. I didn't really know what was going on at WrestleMania 20, but I liked the show enough that I started watching Raw again. It was I think it was 2 years later. I didn't see the Royal Rumble in 2005, but I did see that Batista had won the Rumble, and he was kind of picking that he wanted to go after Triple H, which was breaking up Evolution. So that's kind of like where I picked up and jumped back in. I know Triple H is one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. Missing his heel stable going like a 2-year run running Monday Night Raw sucks. But I've seen stuff here and there along the way. But for some reason, it took me 20 years to watch this year's Royal Rumble. Brock Lesnar ends up defeating the Big Show. So he ends up getting his number for the Royal Rumble match. I skipped through the Scott Steiner versus Triple H match. Is one of the worst WWF Championship matches of all time. Triple H was working with an injured quad. Scott Steiner was working with an injured foot, which never really got better. He had hurt it around the time that WCW closed. That's one of the reasons why he wasn't brought in to WWE right out of the gate. He ended up working for WWE for about a year. He ended up getting 2 championship matches at the January-February pay-per-views. He was left off of the WrestleMania his 1 year that he was working with the company, and I believe the next year's Royal Rumble ended up being his last show, and he was done. He was just the dude in the Rumble. He ended up being like a tag team with him and Test, with Stacy Keibler as their manager. His run was kind of a dud. He ended up going home. TNA dusted him off. I'm not sure, 2005, 2006. He came in. He ended up working tags with his brother. Of course, the Main Event Mafia run that everybody really remembers that he had. But for a while, he was like a real competitor when Samoa Joe was the champion. So he ended up being able to finish out his career. He's in the WWE Hall of Fame where he belongs, not because of what he did in WWE, but in WCW, the NWA, as a member of the Steiners. His singles run at the end of WCW was really good. It was one of the main reasons why I was still watching. I thought he was a really good heel champion at the time, so that was that. I had some questions right after the Brock Lesnar won his match. They ended up going to the back and they interviewed Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho said that he had drawn number 30 in the Rumble, but he traded it to select number 2 because he wanted to recapture the magic that Shawn Michaels had, I believe, in 95, where he won the Rumble from the number 1 slot. and he wanted to teach Shawn Michaels a lesson. When Shawn Michaels and Jericho got into the ring, I don't know what their problem was, because it started out with the Jericho music playing, but Christian coming out on the entrance ramp. Once we realized it was Christian and not Chris Jericho, Jericho slid in the ring and jumped Shawn Michaels from behind. I know that they end up having a match at WrestleMania 19 coming up around the corner, so I don't know what started the beef, especially if at the time Jericho is wrestling with Christian as a tag team partner. When is that's 20, so that's a year from now that they have the match over Lita. So that really has nothing to do with it. So I don't know why Jericho and Shawn have so much problems, but Jericho ends up jumping Michaels from behind. Jericho ends up going outside of the ring, grabbing a steel chair, decking Shawn, splitting him open right across the top. Chris Nowitzki comes out number 3. Chris Nowitzki was honestly a blue chip prospect. Most people will know him. He had a very short run in WWE, but once he got out, he had to retire because he had concussion problems. And then he became like a real proponent fighting for wrestlers as well as sports athletes, not to be having to work with concussions, to being able to take time off to study the brain properly. Sort of like he went into the whole thing, like exposing like what CTE was. And I don't think anybody says that he's like kind of bad at what he does. I think he really stands up and gets rights for people. I think that wrestlers and as well as football players really look at concussions differently 20 years later. I think a lot of it has to do with the work that Chris Nowinski does, whether if that was him, going through the works of like radio interviews, TV interviews. But I don't think he's a doctor, but he did go to Harvard. That he knows what he's talking about, and he was able to get the knowledge out there for people. But when Nowitzki went through Tough Enough and he debuted, he started wearing his Harvard jacket. He looked like a dude that could go. I liked him. He would have been a guy that I said, like, let's see where this goes. It just didn't get to run out. I think he ended up getting hurt with a kendo stick to the head from Tommy Dreamer. That I think is what ended his career. And if that's not what it is, I 100% apologize. This is 20 years ago we're talking about. But Nowinski was a dude, man. From there, we had Rey Mysterio come in number 4. We had Edge, number 5. We had Christian come down at number 6. Shawn Michaels ended up being the first and probably the only person to come in number 1 that was eliminated first. He was only in the Rumble for about 2 minutes. Jericho was beating him up. Actually, at one point, Nowinski, his number got called, and he came down to the ring, and he just like threw his hands up like, Jericho, you do what you got to do. It looks like you got bad blood here. You figure it out. That was when he was able to dump out Michaels. And then that's when action really started picking up. After Christian, we had Chavo Guerrero, we had Tajiri. Bill DeMott came out number 9. I will be 100% honest. I have no memory of Bill DeMott being on the main roster at any time in WWE. I remember Hugh Morris. I remember him sitting in the box at WrestleMania 16 as a member of Team WCW that Shane O'Mac gave the shout out and pointed at during his entrance. But as being a main roster guy, no clue what the hell was going on with there. Tommy Dreamer ended up coming out. He ended up bringing his hardcore weapons with him, giving the match a little bit of a different feel for a second. B2, who was John Cena's guy at the time, who was actually Bull Buchanan. He was starting to grow his hair back a little bit. He had a little bit of a different look at the time that I wasn't used to. He got dumped out as soon as he got into there. We had Rob Van Dam come out at number 12. Matt Hardy came out with Shannon Moore as his sidekick. He was doing this whole V2 thing. Eddie Guerrero came out at number 14. Jeff Hardy came down, and immediately you could tell that there was bad blood between the Hardys. Jeff Hardy at the time was wrestling on Raw. Matt Hardy was on SmackDown. Every single time they kind of wanted to get Jeff Hardy going. For a long time, people really thought of him that he could be a main event guy for WWE. It took him a good another 10 years to get there. I don't really remember when his, we'll call it sabbatical away from WWE was, when he went and wrestled for TNA for a while, and then he ended up coming back. Was it 2010 Armageddon when he won the championship? I'm straight guessing how long it would take him to really get to the top of being a WWE champion. But normally when they wanted to keep them apart, they wouldn't want to turn the Hardys against each other. We all saw at WrestleMania 25, they went out there, they had one hell of a match against each other. That was years and years in the making. But people loved the Hardys so much, nobody really wanted to see them fight. So it was one of the reasons why they just would put one on Raw and they would put one on SmackDown until they decided, like, hey, let's put these guys back together. Let's see, where are we? Rosie from 3 Minute Warning came out at number 16. Test, number 17. From there we go to John Cena coming down at number 18. Charlie Haas at 19. Rikishi was followed by his brother, Jamal. Then we had Kane coming out at number 22. Shelton Benjamin, number 23. Booker T, number 24. A-Train, number 25. Maven came out number 26. Goldust, number 27. I'll tell you the truth, I just watched this minutes ago. I don't remember Goldust coming out at all. Brock Lesnar, the guy who didn't even pick a number until the show actually started, ended up being lucky by the last number left in the bucket, I guess was number 29 that he drew. And then Undertaker came out number 30. Undertaker was making a comeback. I guess he had been away from WWE for a while, probably due to an injury or something like that. He rode his bike down to the ring with the full biker gimmick. Once he got down in there, he started cleaning house a little bit, and at one point, they reran the gimmick from 2002. Maven threw the drop kick, same spot they did the year before that dropped the Undertaker. Huge surprise, one of the biggest surprise eliminations in all of the Royal Rumble's history. This time, Undertaker was able to not go over the top, immediately turned around, and he threw Maven out. One of the coolest spots that there was in this whole deal, other than Rikishi giving his brother the stink face in the corner. If you know the kind of like dimensions that you have between them and the brotherly love that you got there. Final four. Another thing to shout out that was cool, when John Cena ended up coming out. What number was he? Number 18. He rapped his way down to the ring. Pretty cool gimmick. At the time, it still worked. He rapped until he came to Raw, and I want to say like 2005, when he came over in the draft kind of thing. That's when he started going with the Marine gimmick instead of the rapper gimmick, and it just changed a little bit. I thought that was really cool. He was wearing a Houston Astros jersey. This show was in Boston, Mass. So I guess he wanted to get booed, and that's the reason why he was wearing that instead of wearing like a hometown Larry Bird jersey or a Red Sox jersey or something like that. But final four of this pay-per-view, of this match, ended up being Brock Lesnar, Undertaker, Kane, and Batista. Let's see. At one point, I guess Undertaker was able to eliminate Batista, and then he ended up picking Kane up, trying to do like a thing like, hey, me and you were brothers of destruction. We'll turn on, we'll throw Lesnar out, and then me and you can figure out who's going to win this thing from there. He ends up sort of duping Kane, throwing him out, which was funny because of their history. Earlier in the Rumble, we had seen Kane throw out his own tag team partner, Rob Van Dam. Immediately after he had done it, Jim Ross mentioned that Kane told Rob Van Dam that he was going to do it. More than likely, that was a promo that was on Raw. It was on something that I didn't see on this show. Batista ended up coming back into the ring with a steel chair, went to go hit Undertaker with it, but completely missed, and then he just fell out of the ring in between the second and third rope. I was thinking maybe he messed up his elimination. At that point, Brock was able to throw Undertaker out because of the fact he was paying attention to Batista more than anything else. The second that Undertaker hit the ground, he kind of like gave the respect to Brock, like, you did it, you deserved it, you got me. I took my eye off the prize and you were able to throw me out. In the upcoming months, Undertaker would turn heel and they would have one hell of a run with Undertaker and Brock. I believe they would have 3 matches this year. They would have the match that had no ending on pay-per-view. I think it was Unforgiven. When one of them I think it was Undertaker threw Brock just through like the sign of the pay-per-view at the entrance. They would have the Hell in the Cell match. I don't think this is the year that they have the biker chain match. Is that what it was? Something like that. But one hell of a rivalry. Of course, he would get picked up later. They would end up having the SummerSlam match, which would lead to another Hell in the Cell match where Bray Wyatt would eat Undertaker and Kane's souls. That's weird. But Brock gets the win. From putting pieces together, WrestleMania 19, one of the biggest matches was built because of this match right here with Michaels and Jericho. Booker T, at this time, you were not able to really tell that he was going to get a championship shot against Triple H, but when it's looked at as like championship matches at WrestleMania, that's kind of like one of the most forgotten ones that there is. Most people draw it up to the fact that Booker didn't beat Triple H at that WrestleMania, and so many people thought he was going to do it. You would have WrestleMania 19 would be Brock versus Angle. Undertaker would have that weird 2-on-1 match. That guy, Nathan Jones, that was supposed to be his tag partner, wasn't even in the Rumble. So I still don't even know where that guy came from or what his deal is. He's not in the match, but he ends up making a run-in during the match. But this was I want to say it was one hell of a trip down memory lane. But I have really no memory of the show. Like I said, I had never watched it before today. So, hey, it was a good Rumble. And we'll have to see what the next one is I missed. So, 2003, Brock gets the win. Ends up going to WrestleMania main events against Kurt Angle. He has the botched moonsault and still ends up finding a way to get the pin. And then a year later, he wrestles against Goldberg. Dude's done. He's just gone. Peace out, everybody.